And we're going to give the floor to William.
All right.
And here we go.
So it is that time of Epic once again where I get to show off just random stuff I've been working on over the course of the week. This is, in fact, the 8th presentation I've given for Epic, showing off whatever cool stuff we've been working on. As a matter of fact, I am wearing the shirt today from Epic 2015, which was the first year that I attended and I presented something. And when it came time to figure out what I was doing for this particular demo, the big thing about the demo is it's mostly just showing off whatever the new stuff we have in the engine is, and whatever new accessibility stuff we have. So when it comes down to what to put in, a lot of times it'll be like, in the second Epic we ever had, this was like 3D was the new thing. So we're going to have 3D games. That's what I'm going to be showing off at the presentation this time. A little further down the road, we had stuff where it's like, in this release, we've got stuff that we can do now using the scene editor. So the scenes are what we're going to be using as part of this stuff. And then along the way too, we ended up getting our UIA backend, the technical thing that lets us talk to screen readers directly, that made it possible to do natively accessible games. It's like that was the big thing. So it's like, okay, we're going to emphasize that. And for this year, the big thing that we added on the back end of the game engine was something called shaders. And shaders are not something that I expect anyone here to go and try and program because, to be frank, they are ludicrously difficult. Basically, what shaders are little programs that you run on your graphics card, and it tells the graphics card how to render each individual pixel on a section of the screen. The math involved is nuts. And to be frank, I'm going to show you a program that has a bunch of shaders in them, and I wrote literally none of these. All of the shaders that are part of this are stuff that other people wrote and made publicly available and that I am borrowing, but I could not have written these shaders in the time of Epic because they are really difficult. They're also purely visual. They don't really have any accessibility hooks, at least not so far. I think that Stefan and I have talked a bit in the past about would it be possible to make shaders and shader design accessible, and the answer is we don't know. Maybe it's possible, but it would be hard, and we're definitely not there yet. But that being said, I do always try and make the games accessible. So the game I'm going to be showing off is accessible, and you can all let me know if you think I did a good job or not. In terms of the actual game itself, though, when I was trying to figure out what to make, Stefik made a suggestion of, it's like, well, why don't you just take the game that you made last year, which was this 3D sort of top-down tactics game moving around, and like shooting robots in this sort of turn-based strategy sort of game. Why don't you just take that and add some shaders to it? It'll be the game that you had before, but it'll look a lot better because it has shaders on it. And I didn't end up doing that, but I did think it was an interesting concept. But rather than going back and adjusting the most recent game that I made for Epic, I figured it would be cool to go back and revisit the concept I had for the very first demo I made back in 2015, which I don't know how many people we have who were here at that Epic where I had my first demo. And even if you were there, I can't imagine that you remember what that demo was 7 years ago. But it was basically just this little rinky dink, just like there's a background of some stars. You have like a little blue UFO on one side, a little red UFO on the other. You control the blue one. The red one just sort of bounces up and down, and it has just like some repeating audio that indicates if you're sort of level with it or not. And you have a button to just like shoot little projectiles at it. Just like this really primitive space shooter game that was a big deal at the time because it was a big deal that we could get Quorum to run any game at all. But compared to the stuff we have now, and compared to how much better I am at programming compared to 7 years ago, it's really small. I actually wanted to show it again before showing the new thing, but I can't even find it anymore because 7 years ago we didn't put up the games anywhere on like a repository or anything. It's lost somewhere on a laptop that's like buried in my closets or something. But with the background of just imagine yesteryear and the simple shooter game that we once had. And I'm going to pop open my screen. I'm going to share with NVDA going. So here's the screen reader.
Meeting controls window. Participants can now see your screen alert.
Can people see my screen, and can people hear the screen reader?
You can hear the screen reader.
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead
Quorum
and
Studio 4.0.
this.
Build successful in 0.5 game window.
Okay, so accessibly, not much has happened yet. In terms of what is appearing visually on the screen, I have on the left side a sort of jet fighter. It's one of our 3D models from our 3D scene assets. Off the right side of the screen, 2 enemy ships have just flown in and settled about 2/3 of the way off to the right. And the background is this nebula sort of mist, this sort of ethereal blue, purple, black, sort of just roiling movement in the background, which is the very first shader that is used in the game, but I promise not the last. This is something that if you wanted to do this previously,
Firefox 1
Sorry.
experience
One second.
Call of the Wild.
I think I have some
Experience
background music
game
going
window.
there.
Game paused.
Didn't want to show that yet. So far, I haven't shown off any of the accessibility, except for a little bit I just showed by accident when I pressed my control button trying to mute NVDA. The goal of this game is that, as compared to the previous game, which is a sort of turn-based tactics game, I wanted something that was real-time this time. I don't want to try and tread the same ground I always have. The thing that's nice about turn-based is that if I present as much information accessibly as I can sort of trust that there will be enough time for the screen reader to communicate with you, to let you parse it out, and maybe it won't be the best accessibility, but it will be present, and you'll be able to play the game. In this case, because I'm doing something that's real time, I have to get a little bit more creative with how I'm doing the accessibility. And it's not the first time that I've done an accessible real-time game. As a matter of fact, it's not even the first time I've done an accessible real-time shooter. One of the earlier demos I did, just when we got the 3D system going, was this first-person shooter where you're just sort of in the center of a room, you turn left and right, and there was audio beeping to let you know where these little spherical targets were popping up, and you tried to shoot them as they popped up. The thing about that one, though, was A, it was using sounds that we were playing through the system, and B, there was no time crunch to it. You could take as long as you wanted to go around and find the things and shoot at them, which is not going to be the case for this game. So I've had to get a little bit more creative in some ways. Now, the player is this ship off to the left side, and as they move around, there's this sort of clicking sound that plays, and I don't know how well the audio comes through in terms of what is getting picked up on Zoom here.
We heard
But
it.
okay, cool. The pitch increases and decreases slightly as you go up and down. Here's a slight difference there. It's
Yes.
it's a subtle sort of effect, but I'm trying to get just as much subtle information around as possible. And importantly, as I'm moving around, and sort of like you spot by spot,
Leo
so
Inamura has joined the meeting alert.
as it bounces up and down, you sort of smoothly slide between position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's 7 rows total in the game. But if I go into a row that has an enemy in it, I get a little beeping sound letting me know there's something there. So if I want to, I can now fire on it.
Space.
And for that, I've just gotten 2 more shaders involved. The projectile that is shot by the player is using this sort of whirling plasma ball that I found online on a place called Shader Toy, which is where I got all of the shaders that I'm using for this. There's also this sort of pixely sort of digitized explosion that comes out from the enemy when you explode them. And although I can't provide any accessibility in terms of what the shaders are, because the shaders are literally programs going to the graphics card to tell you each individual pixel, anything that's got a shader attached, I've tried to attach some kind of audio to. The background has a unique musical cue going with it that when this background changes, it'll have a different musical cue. When a projectile goes out, each projectile has its own audio. When something is blown up, well, you're going to hear it explode. There's one more ship here, so I'm going to go down and shoot that.
Space.
And so far, the screen reader hasn't done much, but I do think it adds some value to this. Just because if I'm ever unsure as to where I am, I can always ask the screen reader, NVDA, where does my game take place?
Space.
It takes place in space. Thank you very much. Now, in terms of what's going on in the game now. You can hear that there is this sort of queuing sound. Another ship has arrived on the scene. And as a quick aside, I was working on the accessibility for this, and if there's one thing I've clearly missed out on the accessibility, I don't have any cues for when the ships enter into the scene. If you go into a row with them, it'll let you know, but I haven't gotten the entrance of ships in, so that is something that I'm missing. But I can hear the projectiles coming. It is a little bit difficult because I don't really know where the projectiles are at the moment, but I wanted to give you some information so you can get a sense of where it is about you. So as I'm moving now, I'm moving just between the two bottom rows right now, and I'm not really hearing anything other than the blipping of shots being fired. But if I move up one row, I have some audio coming through, and I don't know if Zoom will translate the spatial audio, but right now I have audio that's coming in only through the left ear of my headphones. The right side is completely silent, but the left side, there is the sound of this sort of beeping as projectiles get closer, and the sort of swooshing sound, which is the sound of the projectiles as they are literally passing by the ship. If I moved up one row when the swooshing sound is happening, I would dodge into a bullet and I would get hit. If I get in front of it, if I get actually in front of a projectile, I have a different sound that plays, letting you know there's something coming right head on at you. And then when it gets really close, about a second from impact, it gets really fast-pitched, really fast-paced and high-pitched to let you know that you're about to get hit, like right now, you gotta move. So this gives you some sense of context of what is going on around me, the directional audio and the different audio cues when something is next to me, passing by me, and just about to impact.
Okay. Press enter to continue.
At that point, I moved into the central row. I took a shot at the enemy ship. I blew it up. Took a couple seconds for the remaining projectiles to go by because each of the projectiles takes a little bit of time to travel across the screen. And now I've just got this blinking prompt that comes up that says press enter to continue. This exists for one really important reason. It's just so I have some time to talk without anything going on the screen for a second. If I go ahead and press enter now, more enemies are about to appear. And the directional audio was okay when there was one guy shooting at me, but now there's 7. And they're all shooting at me all basically at once. And this is a lot of stuff going on in my ears right now. Something is in front of me. I guess I should move. Okay, this is too much. So at this point, I'm gonna pause.
Game paused. Use the arrow keys or tap to navigate between categories, use space or enter to inspect elements in a category, and use control to unpause.
So
Player and player projectiles. Press enter to inspect.
I forgot how much NVIDIA is going to talk there. And because I was not very intelligent about how I put my keyboard bindings here, I bound control to pause and unpause, which means I can't shut up NVIDIA without unpausing the game, which is a problem. So I would want to rebind this. I'm only just now realizing my mistake on the binding. Previously I had it on shift, but then you couldn't use shift tab without pausing and unpausing. So there's some adjustments that need to be made to the bindings on this. But the important thing is that when you press the pause button, a couple things happen. It plays a sound and a shader appears that causes sort of purple swoosh, this radial sort of blast of mist to expand out over the edge of the screen. And now at the edge of the screen, there is this sort of lengthening and receding, just sort of purple mist that goes in and out, sort of just showing this sort of ethereal, the thinking space of me pausing and considering my options. It is accompanied by, there's currently a purple box around the player ship on the left side, which is basically on fire. This is showing what's selected in the accessibility navigation. The fact that it's on fire is completely unnecessary, but I found the shader and I just thought it looked cool, which is basically half the point of a shader. If I use the keys now, right now I'm currently looking at the player, but there's 4 categories that I can go through. I can look at the player and the projectile shot by the player, or
row inspection. Press enter to inspect.
I gotta always give the screen reader an extra second because it always says just a little bit more than I think it does. I can inspect each row to see what is in each row, or
enemy projectiles. Press enter to inspect.
I can look at each of the projectiles. So I literally just have, okay, I am getting shot at. I just want to not die at the moment. Where are the projectiles? I can start navigating through those, or I can
hostile ships. Press enter to inspect.
I can just ask the system, please let me navigate through the enemy ships. I need to know where they are so I can shoot at them. For right now, I'm going to go back to the rows.
Row inspection. Press enter to inspect. Row 0 contains 1 enemy's 3 enemy bullets.
Okay, so I know the bottom row, row 0, has 3 bullets and an enemy in it, and I'm gonna move up one at a time here.
Row 1 contains 2 enemies, 2 enemy bullets. Row 2 contains 1 enemies, 2 enemy bullets. Row 3 contains player, 1 enemies, 2 enemy bullets.
Okay. I can tell that this is the row that I am currently in. There's an enemy and there are bullets that are in this row. That seems bad, so I should probably know what's going on in terms of the bullets and me. I'm gonna enter into this row.
Player, row 3.
So I am the player, I'm in the row 3. I can move forward to what else is in the row.
Player, row 3. Player. Player.
Or
row
at least
3.
I should be able to. That's not good.
Bullet, 13 miles, row 3.
I'm not sure why I got stuck on there for a second, but what's important is that I can navigate and it goes from left to right. So literally as I am moving into the row, I can inspect each thing as it's getting closer to the player. So for that one, that was...
Bullet, 13 miles, row 3.
Now you might look at the screen and say, wow, 13 miles sounds like a really long distance for what is really close to my ship on the screen. But remember, we're in space, we have no frame of reference, so all these things could just be really big. So the camera's just really far away. Importantly though, the bullet is 13 miles away, 13 units. The bullets travel relatively slow, but 13 is still pretty close to me. I can check to see what the next bullet after it is.
Bullet, 54 miles, row 3.
So you can imagine the difference between this bullet at 54 and the previous one is about the time it takes for each of those pews that I've been hearing in my ears. And then behind it is the enemy.
Skiff 1, 63 miles, row 3.
The skiff here is what is actually shooting at me, so I should probably deal with him. I know that I have a bullet that's 13 ahead of me.
Bullet, 13 miles, row 3.
So the most important thing is figuring out, okay, I need to dodge out of the way of this. Can I actually safely do that at the moment? So I am going to go ahead and come back out of the row view.
Row 3 contains player, 1 enemies, 2 enemy bullets. Row 2 contains 1 enemies, 2 enemy bullets.
So I've gone down to the previous row and I'm just looking what's in the previous row because it always goes from left to right, so I can be sure that I'm getting the sense of what's immediately closest to the player, what's the biggest threat to me right now.
Bullet, 0 miles, row 2.
Okay, 0 miles. 0 miles is really important. If it's 0, that means it is overlapping with the player right now. So if I move down, I will run right into it and I will take damage. Let's go back up.
Row 2 contains 1 enemies, 2 enemy. Row 4 contains 1 enemies, 2 enemy bullets. Bullet, 0 miles, row 4.
Okay, so currently in the row above me and the row below me, there's currently a bullet at 0 miles. So if I move right now, I'm gonna take damage. So what I know I need to do is I need to move out of the way that the bullet that is coming right at me. I need the bullets to the sides to pass, so I need to wait a moment before I move. And I should probably take a shot before I move if I want to shoot the guy that's in the same row as me. So I have my plan now. I'm gonna unpause and I'm gonna take action. So unpause, shoot, move. Now, if you are looking at that and you think to yourself, I definitely took more actions than what I just planned out, and this still seems like it would be very difficult to play, I think that's probably true. I'm doing some experimentation here to see what's possible. I think this game is playable, but definitely, if I have the choice, it's easier to play this with my eyes than using the auditory cues and accessibility. But I think it's possible, and I think that the accessibility on this is a little interesting as well. But I'll talk about that a little bit more after I've shot some of these things that are currently beeping in my ears. So,
Space. Space. Press enter to advance to next level.
So that's the end of that level. In terms of what we have done with the accessibility for this game has a lot of different, the game has a lot of objects in it. There are tons of bullets, there are tons of enemies, the player is here, the background has got the shader going on, there's a label currently blinking at me saying press enter to advance to the next level. In terms of the accessibility, there are exactly 2 objects in this whole game that are accessible. They are dummy items that whenever something happens that I want to report to the screen reader, I set the name of one of the objects, I bounce to that one, and then that's it. When that one is done and I want to say something after that, the other object gets a name and we just pop over to that one. So we're using a trick here that Stefka and I ended up coining as the two dummy approach, basically just having two dumb objects with names that we're just bouncing back and forth. And there are some pros and cons to doing this. One is that, or one advantage is that if I have something where I really don't want to represent it as an element in the game hierarchy, but I want to give you some information about it, that gives me a way to do it. So I came into this thinking, you know what, I'm gonna have some shaders, there's gonna be some weird visualizations going on. I don't know what that's gonna look like. So for something like the game pausing, I figured I might wanna have some way to report just arbitrary stuff with my dummy objects. I don't know if this is gonna have an actual item attached to it, so I'm gonna just use these two objects I'm bouncing between. Downside to this approach. Oh my gosh, it's so much harder because I have to manually construct the accessibility tree myself instead of letting any of the interface stuff do it. I don't have automatic tabbing back and forth. I had to make that all myself for this game. It was way more complicated than I expected. It is useful to have as a tool if you need it, but I did it the whole game this way, and that was not smart. I definitely could have had the bullets be focusable objects with accessibility information without having the two dummies have to calculate it. But now I'm just waxing philosophical. I have advanced to the end of this level. Let's press the enter key and see what happens. So,
Press enter to continue.
I am on a new level. Now the purple, pinkish, sort of almost soothing nebula from before is gone, replaced with this dark, murky red and black, sort of magma-looking background. The music has changed as well to reflect the new level. And although I can't present the pixels of the shader to you accessibly, I can at least try and get music that gives a bit of a sense of the change in tone of the shader. And now I'm being asked to press enter to continue. At this point, we're into the actual gameplay proper. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna keep trying to audio describe as I go, but at this point, I'm basically just gonna play the game for a little bit. 6 ships have arrived, 1 in every row except the middle. So thankfully, this middle row I'm in right this second is currently safe. And as they get closer, the directional audio is coming in. This particular music track is actually quite loud, so I should probably turn that down. But I am still getting some of the directional audio from the bullets coming nearby. I'm gonna wait for the swoosh, and then move and shoot, and then go back to safety. So one of the enemies is gone now. I'm gonna move through, and I'm gonna get a little bit more aggressive and firing at these other ones. Now there are, oh boy, a lot more. There are 2 rows of 6. 1 row all the way at the bottom, 1 row all the way at the top. There's only a single gap of safe space at the top here that I have to thread the needle on. I'm gonna take some shots as I'm moving here. And now there's 3 rows of 7, and they are firing at me in random patterns. Now I'm firing on the last set of fighters here.
Press enter to fight the boss.
As the last bullets pass by, I have dealt with all of the little troops, and now I am ready to fight the boss. This is probably the first time I've actually gotten to a boss fight in one of the demos that I've had. So I'm gonna press enter, I'm gonna show it off. And unfortunately, no audio to accompany this, but a giant magmatic fireball has just appeared on the screen. It has a sort of roiling, magma-like substance to it that seems to be churning. It almost looks like an artistic rendition of like a red giant star or something. And compared to the ships that I've been fighting, this thing is 3 rows across, so it's quite large in comparison to the other enemies. I called this the pyroclasm, and the idea behind this is that it's going to be like Asteroids. If you've ever played the old arcade shooter Asteroids, where you're just this little ship in the center of the screen, a massive sort of asteroid-shaped blob is coming at you. When you shoot it, it breaks, but it breaks apart into smaller pieces that begins flying everywhere. So as I shoot this, the idea is that it's going to just litter the screen with debris, and it's going to become quite a challenge to dodge it all. So let's fire on it and see what happens.
Space. I ran out of time to program the boss.
There's always time constraints when it comes to Epic. So it was cool to show it off at least, though.
Press enter to party.
I think the most important part, though, is what comes next. Let's advance to the last level, if we could call it that.
You win.
And so the last screen is just this rain of bright rainbow colored confetti, the color shifting as it falls down and blinking on the screen, and golden text is "you win." And that is slightly more complicated than the demo that I showed off 7 years ago at Epic 2015. I see Amanda has some sort of comments. This is the time for comments, yes.
One, I have a very specific student that would love to play this game.
Okay.
And two, it's just a little more complex. Just
a little, yes.
Pretty great, William. Pretty great.
Thank you. I kind of just want to leave the game up and just like groove to the music a little bit while we're doing comments, but I can also close this at any point. If there are any questions about anything that I did, either in terms of the game or like how the game works or how it's played, or if there's any questions about the code. I know we didn't do any games as part of this year's Epic, so this isn't directly attached to anything that we were doing in the sessions this time. But I am still happy to answer any questions regarding content, the code, etc. Otherwise, I will briefly at least go over just the scale of what's here. So I am going to close the game.
Experience programming.
And I'm going to I am going to close NVDA for the, no, I'll keep NVDA open actually.
Running Quorum Studio.
So any questions before I open up the code just to show you what's there?
Yeah, with the audio. So
Yes.
One, very cool. Two, you're right. The second level, if the background music is louder than the directional audio, that would be really hard to filter out.
Yeah.
But so when the ship has whooshing balls on either side of it,
yep,
are those the only whooshes you can hear, or can you hear the ones that are in the further reaches?
So the whooshing sounds, I only play whooshing sounds for the balls that are directly next to you, and the reason for that being that
it would be way overwhelming if you did.
Yeah,
that was my question. Yeah.
Even with the somewhat limited audio I'm giving you, where it's just information about the row you're in, the row above you, the row below you, I still found it overwhelming with just that amount.
Yeah.
And was basically, I don't know if this was successful, but my intent behind it was that if the screen is crazy cluttered, you pause the game, use the accessibility to give yourself like a moment to breathe for one, but also a moment to sort of figure out where stuff is, give yourself a second to sort of make a plan to get yourself out of whatever situation you're in right that overwhelming second. And then once you're sort of in a safe spot, as soon as one row is clear, then you have some breathing room to just use the directional audio. So it's not just I fire, I move, I pause again, I reevaluate the whole row. Okay, I unpause, I move once, I fire once. It's just like, if you wanted to play the game that way, that's fine, but I imagine that would probably get a little bit tedious. The goal being is just like, for the big moments, I can use the pause and the full accessibility, and then the sonification is a supplemental thing for just sort of like, now it's lower stakes and I'm just moving through cleaning up basically.
Oh, okay. Very, very cool.
Any other questions?
Do you need people to play it and give you feedback?
If you would like to play this, this is publicly available on one of the Quorum Labs repositories. You can go ahead and you can pull this down and you can play this or any of the previous two. I think the last two demos are up there. There was a little bit of a loss, in part because, like I said, 7 years ago, we didn't put these up at all. along the way, we did eventually start putting them up, but we A, didn't put them up in the repositories, and B, we stopped using Sodbeans, our old thing that we used to build stuff. We started using Quorum Studio instead, and the projects don't load the same between the two. So you'd have to go find the old Sodbean stuff just to run those old projects anyway. But the last, this year and the previous 2 years, I know for certain are up and are available. And that includes this game, the 3D tactics game, and the audio platformer.
I put the repository on GitHub in the chat for anybody that
Perfect.
wants to
Thank you.
pull it down.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm certainly curious to see what these shaders actually look like because I'm not
Sure.
Expanded.
So
I mean, obviously, I know these are ridiculous and insane, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
And again, I did not write any of these shaders. All of these were pulled from a website called ShaderToy. I have just a folder that is full of all the shader stuff. There is a few classes in here. Every shader requires 3 different classes, one for the code that goes down to the graphics card, one for the code that is used to let Quorum tell the graphics card what information that needs. So stuff like a bunch of the shaders need to know what the current time in the game is because they use it for stuff like animations. So that sort of stuff has to get passed down through a special class. And then there's a third class that basically just says this shader and this thing that maps the information to shader, they belong together, put them together in one package and then send them down. So if I were to, let's arbitrarily look at, let's look at the confetti shader because I think the confetti shader is
Code
lots of
tab.
fun. It was also written by someone that flaunts every convention of what I would consider to be well-named variables, considering they do things like define capital T as the time variable. So there's just stuff in here that's just capital T times something. And
From KO Inamura to everyone.
I am actually going to close NVDA
Exit.
because I was expecting I might use it if I wanted to highlight a certain, like an individual line of code accessibly, but I think I'll just audio describe it anyways. For stuff like the confetti, I could not tell you at this exact instant what the math in here is doing. I am capable of figuring out this math, but it would take like hours to figure out what's going on in here. And that's definitely not time I had for EPIQ. But if you look at something like the confetti shader is actually one of the relatively simpler shaders. Basically, the gist of it being that it makes a loop and over 60 times does something called assigned distance function. You don't need to know what that is. That's not an expected learning outcome of EPIQ. But basically, assigned distance function is there is an equation somewhere that if you plug numbers into it, it gives you a shape. So really basic one, assigned distance function for a box says if you plug some numbers into it, this will tell you if the current position that you're looking at, the current pixel, if it's inside the box or outside the box, how far away is it from the edges of the box? Those stuff get used all over the place in the shaders. So for something like the confetti shader, they use a bunch of fake cylinders to represent the individual confetti bits that are coming down. In terms of a more complicated shader, not that this isn't already insane, in my opinion, I think that the one for the enemy bullets, I think, was one of the more complex looking ones. It involves just a whole bunch of bits and pieces on it. And the enemy bullets are this sort of basically a sphere, but they have these spikes that jut in and out of them that give this sort of like bacteria look to them. If I had wanted to build something like Dr. Mario, I probably could have used that shader for that, and it wouldn't have looked out of place at all. But there are a lot of shaders, definitely more than I could go over all in detail, especially because I don't frankly understand the detail in great length. But all of the shaders include a attribution in the comment, including the name of the user on ShaderToy, a link to the actual shader on ShaderToy, as well as the license it's under. And all of these are legal for non-commercial use to be put in here. So if you are someone that you saw the shaders, you thought this looks cool, I want to see what the code behind this looks like, and you want to see it in its completely original form, you can go to the links that are in the comments for each of these and grab the original page, and you can see it right on the website. ShaderToy lets you look at the shaders on their website, which is really cool. Past that, most of the time spent in the game was in 2 places. One is in the accessibility, which basically I have a really hacked solution with the two dummies. The two dummies are less the hack. Well, they're pretty hacky, but they're a hack with purpose and with intent towards communicating with the screen reader. Whereas the rest of this stuff, there's a lot of values that are getting passed around just to make sure that it figures out what the right things are in terms of what the player's stuff is, what's in the rows, etc., and moving through those. And the other big part of it was all of the, even though this game was real time, it was not turn-based like the last demo was. I ended up using a bunch of the same strategies I employed for the turn-based game for the timing of stuff appearing in the game. So stuff like the enemies don't all come out at once. They don't come out on a timer. It's specifically, you must destroy all enemies on the screen before the next wave comes out. That reuses a bunch of the same code that I used in the previous demo for the turn-based game. I basically just don't make it so that it's always a turn. There's stretches of time when you're in between turns doing stuff in real time, basically. And then turns occur where it says, okay, now it is the time to spawn enemies in off the screen. And then each of the enemies has their own turn system where they say, my current plan is to move. And until I'm done moving, wait to take the next turn. And then it's like, okay, I'm done moving. My next turn is to rotate in space. And then my next turn is going to be to fire towards the player. There's a ton of stuff on this. If there's anything that people would like me to go on to in detail, please let me know. Otherwise, there's only one other thing that I wanted to show, which is just that the code for the boss enemy literally just its name is Pyroclasm, ! Developer note, remember to come back and finish this. I did not get to that, but it is still there for posterity. Yeah, any other questions or comments?
You are correct. Unfortunately, the Zoom loses the stereo effect.
That is too bad. I do recall that was an issue in previous years, so I wasn't expecting they'd probably fix it, but the I will say, sorry, go ahead.
I'll say the sounds did come through, so we got to hear what you were referencing, but to hear it as a a right to left or a, that didn't change.
I getcha. I will say that in my experience using this with the directional audio, if there's only one bullet or if there's only one side where bullets are coming from, the directional audio, I think, works pretty well for me. If I have bullets firing on both sides of me, I start getting directional audio in both ears, and often they're not exactly synced up at the same time because the bullets came at different times. So it is theoretically possible that you could pick out that there's like one beep on one side and one beep on the other side, and they're at different times. If both are at the same time, it definitely gets a lot harder to use the directional audio in any meaningful way beyond just saying, I am surrounded by bullets, at which point pausing to use the accessibility to get more context is probably where you're at least for me when I was using it. The directional audio is definitely not a silver bullet to sonify this this game, but I think it helps. It's a lot of supplemental things all stacked on top of each other to try and get as close as possible to functional. Any other? Yes. I thought I heard someone say something. Any other questions or comments?
I coughed. I was going to add that one thing that is funny about these shaders, it might seem esoteric because it's a purely visual thing, or at least it seems like it. But the truth of the matter is this kind of technology, if we can make stuff, we always experiment in the lab with what the, 3, 4, 5 versions of Quorum down the road, what is possible. If you can make stuff like this accessible, you could hypothetically be a blind person that's a visual effects engineer, or that's doing graphics work for Disney or something, because hypothetically, if you can do stuff like this and make it accessible, then, you can make games that aren't just like primitive things, but you can make very sophisticated things that use all the latest graphics that anybody that can see uses, but you can still be accessible to you. So sometimes we do this stuff because, we want to try to see the future and see what's possible. But in this case too, the secondary effect is that we're going to be using these shaders very heavily for the block system. So, because they need to have rounded corners and they have to have all these kind of funny things in order to make them look right. So it might seem esoteric, but there is a method to the madness that I'll just add there. So
For sure. Even before we get to the block stuff, if you can visually look at Quorum Studio, you have actually been using shaders this whole time that you may not have noticed. Stuff like the tabs having rounded corners now, that's because we have a special shader that we plugged in that puts rounded corners on the tabs. Other stuff like if you've popped open a dialogue and you found that it looks a lot better now, well, they have drop shadows now, just this little subtle shading underneath it that makes it look like it pops out of the screen a little bit, and there's a light casting light down on it, and there's a shadow left underneath it where it occludes the light. That sort of subtle effect is really common on GUI systems, but we couldn't do it before without having the shader system to add it. I think at least our dialogues look a lot nicer now because they have this sort of element of popping out of the screen. So there's really big and crazy and special effects, like awesome things you can do with shaders, and that's mostly what I wanted to show off during the demo. There's a lot of really basic practical things that you can use it for too that makes things look better for the stuff we're doing right now, and for, like Stefik was saying, for the blocks coming up here.
Oh, by the way, one other thing that we should probably mention with shaders is that oftentimes it's very tempting to have your students kind of do the latest and greatest. But like, I would highly advise against teaching your students shaders anytime soon for two reasons. Number one, when we say that they're insane, we're not joking. Like, the mathematics behind these is nuts. Very nasty, linear algebra, differential equations sometimes. I mean, all sorts of crazy stuff that is not high school friendly at all. But in addition, it requires learning a very, very disgusting and inconsistent programming language called GLSL. And then you have to embed it in a funny, magical way. So we're using it behind the scenes only because we don't really have a better option at this point. But like, if we add features like this, we'll probably make it so that you can adjust them, but we probably won't ever add documentation for how to do it unless people really, really want stuff. And even then, it'll probably take a few years. So just be aware, like, this isn't really intended as like a high school friendly feature. So.
Yeah, for context, I've been working on Quorum and on the game engine for the last 7.5 years, and I consider myself a novice with shaders. So I am definitely not like a shader guru. I don't think that where I'm at right now, I could have made all of the shaders that are in this from scratch without a significant amount of time and effort on it. So I mean, yeah, definitely a feature we have more because we expect that we will use it more than we expect that it will be taught to students and that it's useful for teaching curriculum.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? Comments, thoughts? Okay, well, thank you, William. As always, I enjoy watching your demos. I hope other people do too.
So fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it gets graphics to the point of like what you would see in a typical game, but at the same time, it still maintains the accessibility, which is increasingly where we're trying to go. As graphically advanced as possible, but still as accessible as possible. Like that both is really the goal.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll restart it again in a minute. But my vote is, barring objection, let's do the teacher showcase first. Oh, wait, sorry. I will stop. Oh, wait, no. I won't stop the recording yet. The last thing at EPIQ is the teacher showcase. We usually do a teacher showcase where people kind of show off the kind of stuff that they did, but we usually don't record it. And the reason is because we want people to show off and make mistakes and do stuff like that without having it permanently be on the interwebs, right? Because that's like always nice. And what that means is that I am now going to flip off the recording and turn it off probably for the final time for EPIQ 2022. So as sort of the final thing for this year, let me just say, number one, thank you everybody for coming this year. I know that like online conferences, I think we're all probably sick of them to say the least, because we've done so many of them over the last couple of years. But so hopefully we can all be in person again next year and have some fun there. But in addition, I know that a lot of you do stuff in the classroom and things like that too. So thank you, and keep that up. So this is signing off for this year, and then we will do our teacher showcase, and then that is all for the year. So signing off.